James. Okay, good evening, everyone. I would like to call the Committee of the Whole meeting of July 4th, 2022 to order. Would also like to say happy 4th of July to our American neighbors to the south. Hope they're enjoying a great day. My name is J.D. Pachariva, Councillor and Chair of the Community Services and Infrastructure Committee. I would like to begin by reading a safety notice. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate council chambers to the nearest exit door, through the chamber doors, and obey all instructions given, and if assistance is required, please see the clerk. Devan, is that your role tonight? Okay, everyone knows Devan. Once you've evacuated the building, please gather in the front parking lot outside of Town Hall. Also, please ensure you place your cell phones on silent or turn them off. And lastly, the Town of Lincoln Council meetings are posted on our YouTube channel. All members of council are in attendance in person or remotely this evening. We also have staff attending to speak to their area of expertise in person and remotely. Are there any declarations of interest? I see none. Do members have any amendments to the order of tonight's agenda? Okay, I see none. Statutory public meetings, we have none for this evening. Consent agenda, we've got 3 items. So we're now considering item 6, inclusive of item 6.1, Municipal Heritage Committee minutes of May 12, 2022. Item 6.2, Museum Advisory Committee minutes of May 19th, 2022. And item 6.3, 2022 Tile Drainage Loan Program, FN 07-22. Would any member of council like to remove any item from the consent agenda to discuss? Councillor Timmers.
Thank you, Chair Pachariva. I would like to remove the 6.1 Municipal Heritage Advisory Committee minutes. I would like to ask a question regarding those minutes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. And your worship.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on item number 8. Thank you.
I'm confused by item number 8. So it's either 6.1, 6.2, or 6.3, your worship.
Well, I'm looking at item 8, which is other business. Am I on the right minutes? Municipal Heritage, right?
Oh, okay, so the same item 6.1 that Councillor Timmers has lifted.
Okay,
Okay,
perfect. Thank you for the clarity.
excellent. Okay, so we will deal with the other 2 items. Madam Clerk, Madam Deputy Clerk, and then we'll go to and deal with that right after, correct?
Sounds great.
Okay, so there being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell that the following items listed under the heading of consent agenda for Monday, July 4th, 2022 be adopted as recommended. Item 6.3, 2022 Tile Drainage Loan Program, FN 07-22, and item 6.2, the Museum Advisory Committee minutes of May 19th, 2022. I will now ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That's now open for voting.
Oh,
I'll now close the vote, and that motion carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Devan. So we've lifted item 6.1 Municipal Heritage Committee minutes of May 12, 2022. So Councillor Timmers, you go first for your question, and then your worship, you be second, okay?
thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair Pachariva. At our last Municipal Heritage Committee, there was discussion about the black maples on Hickson with the response from staff that there could be possible infrastructure down the road with sewer upgrades. So I had brought forward the fact that the trees are, could be at risk, And if our arborist who's on staff at the town could do an inventory, perhaps look at these trees, identify them, see what kind of condition they're in, and just to make note of them, just through to staff, if that's something that we could do, just to get it out in front of this and not, wait until it happens and now the trees could possibly be at risk for some reason. So I'm looking, I guess, to perhaps Ms. McKay, if that's something that we could do with, the help of our arborist.
So through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, we're currently filling the vacancy for the arborist, but we do have arborists that we can retain to do that assessment.
So through you, Chair, so
Mhm,
is
go
that
ahead.
something that we could take care of, just to, identify, number them, see what kind of health they're in, and then we've got an idea of what's there.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, yes, we can. I will need to follow up with the committee to find out exactly where those trees are.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Timmers. Your worship.
Mr. Chairman, the councillor has dealt with the issue. I just want to reinforce that, and Councillor Timmers is aware of this, but it has been very difficult to get this item to move up far enough on the agenda for it to get discussed at the committee. There are several people on the street who are very, very concerned about this. With the potential for development at Calvary Church, it became even more of an issue, particularly if there's any sewer upgrades and where they might be directed. So I was concerned about the minutes saying that staff could contact. To me, it was pretty clear that staff would contact. And if that isn't clear, I certainly want to make it clear now. And I think the inventory is a great idea, as well as their condition. That would be very, very helpful when any further discussion might be coming up. Thanks very much,
Okay,
Mr. Chairman.
thanks, Your Worship.
Thanks
Councillor
very
Bernay.
much to the councillor.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So just additionally to this, I did have a conversation with our Director of Planning and Monica at the end of last week's meeting, because with some recent clear cutting taking place in Ward 2, there is an additional concern about a large oak tree, an old oak tree on Mountain Street that might be in danger. So I did speak to Mr. Bruder and Monica. I'm wondering if Mr. Bruder is on the line and if he might be able to bring any insight into this subject matter. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, I'm here. If everyone can hear me okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yep, definitely made note of those conversations, Councillor. I brought those forward too with staff. We've been out to look at it at a preliminary level to assess where it is within private property. But moving forward, that's something perhaps I can coordinate further, just further to the discussion just now with Director McKay on how to proceed moving forward to assess that along with the other trees. So more to come on that soon, hopefully.
You good, Councillor Bernay? Okay. So we've got a motion moved by Councillor Timmers. The committee receive and file for information the Municipal Heritage Committee minutes of May 12th, 2022. I will ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And I'm going to close that vote. And that carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Devan. So, now entering into the Community Services and Infrastructure Committee agenda for this evening. Delegations, we have none. So reports, we will now consider item 7.2.1, Truck Bypass Camera Monitoring Pilot Project Update, PW 26-22. Director of Public Works, Mr. Dave Graham will provide a presentation. Director Graham, the floor is yours. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mayor Easton and members of council for giving me the opportunity tonight to provide a brief presentation on the truck bypass camera monitoring pilot project. So this pilot project, it aligns with a number of council's strategic priorities in supporting truck safety in the town of Lincoln. So how did we get here? So truck safety in general, truck safety strategies are a very high priority for the town in responding to resident concerns to help improve road safety throughout the community. More specifically, on April 15th of 2019, Council passed a resolution regarding truck safety in Lincoln. And one of the key action items on that motion was to begin scale inspection station avoidance enforcement blitzes. Scale inspection station avoidance. So what that's referring to is the Vineland truck inspection station, or sometimes referred to as scale. And that's located along the QEW corridor between Vineland and Beansville and operates in the westbound direction. So trucks are required to turn into that inspection station when the inspection station lights are active and they flash on the highway, QEW, advising commercial vehicles to enter the station. However, a portion of truck drivers avoid the inspection station. And what happens is they exit the QEW in advance and then end up bypassing around it using both regional and town roads. Drivers, they avoid the inspection station for a number of reasons. One might be they don't want to slow their route down. They have a certain time that they have to get somewhere, so they may not want to impact the time of their route. Or some may have known issues with their licensing, vehicle defects, even could be overloaded, and they do not want the officers to discover that at the inspection station. So truck safety blitzes, also referred to as project avoidance. So in response to council's motion from 2019, the town has can't even talk here. The town has sorry about that. Town has cooperated with the Niagara Regional Police, MTO, Halton Region Police Services, Niagara Parks Police as well, to complete a number of frequent truck safety inspection blitzes. And at this point in time, we've made a lot of progress. This is now a regular program initiative. It happens a number of times a year where we're completing these truck safety blitzes with our partners. These are large blitzes in our community, and it requires a lot of different resources, a lot of different officers that are strategically placed on potential bypass routes or routes that we know trucks are bypassing on, so strategically placed across the community. And it's a lot of coordination and a lot of planning goes into these blitzes. I'd like to thank our partners for all their support and help over the last number of years. Most recently, we've completed 2 blitzes this year already. For all their support that they're giving the town and making truck safety a high priority for our community. So this slide here provides a bit of a map of the actual camera monitoring pilot project plan. So this was developed in working with our MTO partners at the enforcement group. And the green arrows on the map show the bypass route that we're focusing on. And this was recommended in conversations with MTO. And based on their feedback and also results from our project avoidance blitzes, this is deemed to be the most popular bypass route that trucks are taking, getting off the QEW there, you can see on the map, using Victoria Avenue, heading southbound, then turning right on King Street, going along King Street, and then getting back on the highway either via Ontario Street or Bartlett Road, which is a big concern for the town. we are trying to reduce truck traffic in Beansville, in the urban area. And if a truck doesn't need to be there, we don't want them there. So again, this is the goal, is to reduce the amount of trucks bypassing around the scale through the urban area of Beansville. So on this slide, on the right-hand side of the screen there, you'll notice an image of a camera that gives a bit of a picture of what the camera will look like that we're talking about. And we're using innovative technology, smart surveillance technology. And this camera has a lot of ability, a lot of features, and that's important in order to assist MTO with enhanced enforcement. So the camera has the ability to take very clear pictures of trucks, different angles of the trucks. It'll clearly show, the company name on the side of the truck door, on the trailer, color of the truck. But most importantly, a really important feature of this camera system is a license plate reader. So this camera will be able to take a picture of the license plate on that truck, very clear, and that's very important for MTO with their enforcement work, which I'll talk about a little bit further on in the presentation. One unique feature that we've programmed into this system is that, and I'll just go back to this screen here. You'll notice we have camera 1 down at the highway at Victoria Avenue, and then camera 2 at King Street. So what this camera program will do is when the truck gets off the highway and goes past camera 1 and gets captured, and also if it gets captured again on camera 2, that will send MTO enforcement team an alert, which is, sort of suggesting that, that's probably a higher probability that, hey, we've got a bypass truck here, and it'll help MTO determine whether they want to pursue that truck or not based on the information they're gathering. MTO will also be able to monitor these cameras anytime remotely, and also at the Vineland Truck Inspection Station. Another important benefit to the camera program is that the town will also be able to collect data from these cameras, truck traffic data. And what we plan on doing is we're going to get a schedule from MTO on when the inspection station is operational or when it's not operational, and then we'll be able to correlate that data that we collect from the truck traffic to gain a better understanding is, how many more trucks are we seeing on these cameras when the station isn't in operation or is in operation. And, collecting data is going to be very helpful for us to better and further quantify this issue. We're going to be able to look for more trends and also share this information with our MTO partners for any, additional enforcement strategies as we move forward. MTO enforcement plan. So it's important that, there's a plan in place for enforcement, and what does that look like with the camera pilot program? So a really big benefit for the MTO enforcement team is to be able to run the license plate number from the license plate reader image that they'll get from the camera. And by running the license plate of a suspected bypassing truck, the MTO enforcement officer will be able to, figure out, okay, where's this truck from? What's the jurisdiction? Decide if this commercial vehicle should be intercepted. Is this truck from the United States, or is it from Niagara or Hamilton? So, that they'll gain that information. Again, should this truck be on these roads, basically? Another very important feature of the license plate reader data going back to the MTO is that it'll flag any issues. So the MTO officer will basically be able to pull up that license plate in their own database system and, is there any violations on this truck, any outstanding orders or issues? Again, to further give MTO more tools, is this truck unsafe? Does it have defects, etc.? So once MTO has intercepted the truck, so, you know, they've decided this is a truck that's got a highly, you know, very high probability that it's bypassing, or is there a defect showing up? They intercept that truck, they stop that truck, then they engage the driver in a conversation, trying to get more facts from the driver. You know, what's your trip origin, what's your destination? If they suspect the truck driver is avoiding the inspection station, the officer will escort the truck back to the inspection station for a full detailed inspection of that truck. If they're confirmed to be bypassing, you know, charges can be laid. MTO does have that capability. And/or if there's any other issues found with that truck. In speaking with MTO, another benefit to them is that it allows them to further build and populate their databases for repeat bypass offenders. So let's say, you know, they, 4 months ahead of time, you know, they have a truck that they've determined to be bypassing. They've talked to that truck, whether they've charged the person or did something else with their vehicle if required. That goes in a database. So this will allow them to have a better database to monitor and document repeat drivers for further scale avoidance issues. So this particular slide here, the Town of Lincoln Truck Route Information Map, just wanted to share this with council. The intent here is, in the map on the screen here, the intent was for staff basically put a fairly comprehensive map together, and we took all the Town of Lincoln's truck restrictions, load restrictions, streets where trucks are restricted, streets where there is a truck route, anything to do with truck restrictions within the Town of Lincoln on our road system. We've put it together on one map. And really the objective here is to help educate and inform the trucking industry. We want to make sure that truck drivers within our community know where our restrictions are, know where we have truck routes, and making sure that information is available and people are informed. We will be posting it on, it is posted on our Speak Up Lincoln page for truck traffic. We're also working on putting it on Municipal 511, which is a really good platform to get that information out there. Again, we're looking at other available platforms to further, you know, leverage where we can further educate, get this information out, get it out to the goods movement industry. Just to try and be as proactive as we can to ensure, you know, we're sharing as much information as we can around our restrictions. And thank you. That's all I have for the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Thank you, Director Graham. Councilor Timmers.
Thank you very much, Chair Patriva. Through to Director Graham. Great report, great initiative, and as you said, we've come a long way. And, you know, to see the partnership with the MTO is fantastic. The work that's been happening, you know, the blitzes, it's very, very encouraging. I guess when I see the cameras, my first question was, so if they come off the highway and they head south on Victoria Avenue, is there a way that they can tell by pulling the license if that truck has a purpose, like where that truck's going? Is that information that they would have or not? Because I just visualize them having to stop many people that perhaps have a legitimate reason that they're going on King to deliver something or going that way, so.
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, it's a great question. I think, you know, what MTO is, the more information MTO can get about the truck, say from the camera, you know, the company name, where is this truck coming from? It's very important to understand that. You know, is it a truck that, you know, again, I'm not picking on the United States, but is it from the US, or like, why is it in this area, that type of, so, you know, the company name's gonna be very important to really understand why is this truck using Victoria Avenue, and more importantly, turning right on King Street. So.
And just one other
Yeah, go ahead.
question. So these cameras, are they going to be monitored all the time, like all day and all night, like?
Yeah, so through Mr. Chairman to the councillor, we'll be collecting data all the time on truck traffic. MTO will be monitoring the cameras when they have the inspection station
Okay.
active.
All right, that makes sense, okay. And was that two questions?
That's two. One more.
One more. So, as we read in the report, that there's a lot of communication amongst the truckers and drivers, and so they'll know that the camera's there, they'll know, it's coming, right? So I was thinking about John Street and Green Lane, and I see that they're not restricted at all for the trucks. Is that correct?
Yeah, through Mr. Chairman, that is correct. So, just to expand on that, in discussions with the Mto Enforcement Group, in terms of John Street, they don't really feel trucks are using John Street as a shortcut. I mean, it has that sharp turn at one location. So that isn't a concern at this time. Green Lane, what we're also gonna be doing when the cameras go up, we're gonna be putting up a black cat monitor, if you will. So we're gonna start collecting data on Green Lane all the time as it relates to trucks to help better quantify how many trucks are using Green Lane. Is it a real big issue? Isn't it as bad as we think? And again, we're gonna be able to correlate that data we're collecting when the station is operational. So we'll get a really good understanding of, are a lot of trucks using Green Lane or not? In speaking with MTO and from their blitzes that we've been doing, Green Lane hasn't been a real big concern as it relates to bypass truck traffic.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair Pachariba.
Thank you, Councillor Timmers. Councillor Rinchema. Okay. Do we have to ask the other councillors to turn off, or is that a penalty for turning your thing off? You wait, or what do we do? What do we do, Deputy Clerk? Okay,
Chair, you could have them clear it. And
there we go.
There you go.
Okay. Come back in. Councillor Rinchema.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's really important to say now for everyone watching that the concerns related to trucks going through our downtowns have been ongoing for decades. And the reason that it's just not a simple problem to deal with. It's complex and there's a lot of players involved. It's a little like pushing a greased elephant uphill in the rain to address all the complexities involved. Trucks are important for our local economy. Trucks are important for our regional economy. Trucks are important for the economy worldwide, so that's obvious. But the answer to the question of how to alleviate some of the unnecessary traffic going through our downtowns that has many people concerned is not a simple answer. It has multiple moving parts and requires all stakeholders involved to be diligent and to be committed to solving the problem in a respectful and conciliatory, forward-thinking manner. And I know that Regional Councillor Foster and Mayor Easton have been hammering away diligently at this at the region. And we're seeing action items being crossed off the list from the motion that Councillor Brunet and Councillor Timmers brought in 2019.
Councillor, is there a question coming
Yes,
in?
there
in
is
this? In this?
There is.
Okay,
Thank you.
please.
So I'm happy to see this and thank you very much. My question is, how often I have two questions. How often would we be updated on the data and the resulting actions from the cameras, or will we be? And I'll ask the other question after that.
Through Mr. Chairman to the councillor, so the pilot is a 2-year term. That's what we're suggesting. And we can update council as often as you'd like. We do want to bring information forward on this pilot and share with council what kind of data we're seeing and how the program's going and talking to MTO about how it's helping them with their enforcement. I would say, annually for sure, like we can bring a report next year on this and how it's going as an update, but we'll probably include it with our quarterly updates. It is a project and an important project for the town, so frequent, I guess, would be the answer, but I'm open to, any requests coming forward on that.
Yeah, 'cause I'm really interested to see what the data, how the data data comes in, and I'd really like to see it as, you know, quarterly would be great, if that's what you're planning to do, thank you. And, Mr. Chair, another question, thank you. So in the report, it says that both cameras have picked up a truck, not meaning it's come up Victoria Avenue and now it's turning right on King, thereby avoiding the weigh station. And the next step is to attempt to intercede the truck further down the road. Now, what if that doesn't happen? Is there any follow-up that can be done? And I think you answered the question earlier on. Basically, from there on, it's data collection and monitoring the data. But is there any follow-up that can be done in that particular truck?
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, yes, there is. So, I mean, I think it's important to note too that, you know, not every truck making those turns is necessarily a truck avoiding the scales. So the camera and the information gathered from the camera is gonna really help MTO with those decisions on should we go pursue that truck or shouldn't we? If they decide to pursue that truck based on, you know, where's the truck from? Do they have any concerns with the truck in terms of potential defects, et cetera? They'll pursue that truck, they'll stop that truck, and then they'll kind of go from there on what they discover from when they stop the truck in speaking to the driver, you know, where are you coming from, to try and figure out, okay, is this driver avoiding the inspection station? And is there any defects or concerns that the officer has at that time requiring a full inspection? And then, you know, depending on the circumstance and the situation, you know, if the person is bypassing, they take them back to the inspection station, so they're losing a lot of time. And depending on the inspection, you know, if they find issues, you know, they're gonna deal with that as per their regulations. But they do want to start building a database on repeat offenders, if you will, who frequently are bypassing the inspection station.
Okay, a question of clarification, Mr. Chair. So what if it's determined, so Councillor Timmers asked the question earlier on whether we'd be able to figure out whether the truck is delivering locally and should be on that road or not. If we figure out, no, that truck is not supposed to be on that route, yet the truck didn't get pulled over, is there follow-up based on that, or is it just gonna be data collection and follow-up on a pattern that we see in the long run?
So we're gonna be collecting all truck data. So like I was saying, we're gonna have the inspection station operation schedule. So then we're gonna correlate that data to gain a better understanding of when the station's operational, how many more trucks are we seeing on these cameras? Which I think is gonna be a really very important metric to collect. The MTO are gonna be monitoring the cameras, right? So it'll really depend on, you know, how their monitoring's going and, you know, are they gonna, we can't guarantee they're gonna, you know, be able to identify every truck that's bypassing, but this is definitely gonna be a huge advantage and really help them do that more than they can today. Because they're gonna have the alert that this truck's turning on both those cameras, gonna have license plate reader information in front of them and visuals of that truck.
Okay, thanks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I think, you know, and I don't want to put words in the councillor's mouth, but I think where she was going to is that if they avoid it the first time, there'll be a database constructed by MTO, so the minute that it makes that second turn, that license plate will come up, and they'll get them the second time. Correct?
Yeah, through Mr. Chair, that's correct.
Okay, terrific. Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and first of all, I'd like to say I like the program. I like what we're doing, both in the blitzes and now with the cameras. I do like what we're doing to address the trucks that shouldn't be on our roads. That's the difference to me, is we need trucks, absolutely. We need to deliver goods through our town, but there are trucks that are on our roads that shouldn't be there. And it's simple as that. So, you know, I guess my question through you, Mr. Chair, to Dave is, how aggressive are we getting with this program? It just, reading through the report, seems to me that we're taking a very, very, almost a casual approach to these trucks leaving the highway within a kilometer of the open way station. And then we're taking a second picture of them as they turn onto King Street. And we're still not stopping them by the sounds of it. We're sort of collecting data and we're, seeing, what maybe where they're from, and why wouldn't we just stop them? Is there not enough information that we would have that a truck, while the way station is open, has left the highway within a kilometer of that way station and is now turned down King Street to go to Beamsville? Why wouldn't we stop them all?
Through Mr. Chairman, the intent is to pursue them and stop them. So when they hit both cameras, MTO is gonna get an alert and they're gonna see the truck, the license plate, and the intent would be for MTO to pursue that truck. So I don't want to leave the impression that they're not gonna pursue or stop those trucks. Maybe, that's the
So we
intent.
could through you, Mr. Chair, we
Right.
could potentially see trucks lined up on King Street, just in Vineland, the day the way station is open. Is that what we're saying?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So yes, you should, or MTO may decide to drive down towards Beansville and intercept them, depending.
Wherever it
Right.
is.
Right.
Okay, second question, Mr. Chair. So reading a lot about truck issues in this report, and to me, that's up to the way station to deal with that. It's not as important as getting the truck off the road. There's gonna be trucks that don't need any maintenance work that are on our roads. So my question is, what is the charge? You talk about a bypass charge can be laid. Can you tell us what that charge is? Is it a charge to the driver? Is it a charge to the company? Is it a charge to both? And what is the amount of that charge?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, great question. It can be a charge to both. I don't have the specific amount, and I can follow up on that for you, but yeah, the company could be charged, the driver could be charged. It's really at the discretion of the MTO officer on the actual charge.
Can we find out what that is?
Sure.
Because, we need deterrent. We need deterrent in this, through you, Mr. Chair, that, is getting those trucks that shouldn't be on that road to think twice about leaving at Victoria and going up Victoria. I think that unless we get tough with this, it's not gonna get us the results that we wanna get. One final question, Mr. Chair. So we're gonna spend 32 grand on this. So this is trucks that are leaving because the MTO way station is open. They're also leaving on a regional road and traveling regional roads. So in this partnership, where are those two partners? Where are they in helping us to pay for those and install those cameras, to deal with the issue that is created by the MTO having that way station less than a kilometer away and opening, and then traveling regional roads?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, great comment. I mean, I would say that at this point, the town is, we are taking the lead on this pilot project. For us, it's important for our community to ensure that we're tackling this situation. MTO has come to the table and they're gonna be doing more targeted enforcement. So we're giving them more tools to help with more enforcement in our community for bypass truck traffic.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilor Mikola.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Director Dave. certainly a difficult and challenging task that you've been presented with in dealing with this truck traffic and bypassing and these characters that are intentionally avoiding the scales for whatever reason. That being said, following up a little bit on this conversation that I'm hearing, where is the region in all of this? We've heard that we're taking the lead. These are regional roads that are also part of the transportation infrastructure. Where have they been? And you did mention that the Mayor Easton and that regional Regional Councillor Foster have been involved, but where's the region from a financial position or from a professional engineering position on this?
Through Mr. Chair to the councillor, so the region have been very cooperative in helping us find locations for the cameras and poles, so they've been very cooperative, very supportive of this program. They're definitely happy to see it happening. So they've been working with the project team in getting a pole on King Street and one on the North Service Road. They haven't to date contributed financially to the pilot project. I can say that, but they're definitely in support of it and have been working with us on anything we need as it relates to the regional road approvals or what have you to make the pilot program up and running and for implementation. They're definitely interested in getting data as well that we're going to be collecting, and we're going to be sharing that with them to see how the pilot program is going. So they're definitely, they want to be part of this in those regards and are supportive of what we're doing.
Well, allowing or suggesting where we can put these cameras, I'm not sure if that's enough. I think that they could probably do a little more. It's their roads too, and their residents as well. So that's my comment to that. And then I have another question, if I may, through
Go
your
ahead.
chair too. So we're going to be reliant on the MTO to follow up on, and manage this, right, with the data that's collected live. Have they given an indication as far as what their level of commitment is? How many investigations can we expect in a month or a day, for that matter, if we have this problem that we have?
Through Mr. Chair, to the councillor, a couple comments. So, by providing this more detailed, more focused information will assist the MTO in maximizing, their resources, their officers on this program. I don't have a specific number on how many officers will be deployed at a certain point in time. There are different factors from the MTO side on how many officers they may have available, but they definitely will be able to maximize their officers a lot more and be a lot more efficient with the camera data than what they are currently able to do now with their current resources and information they have.
Again, through you, Mr. Chair, this concerns me because as we're seeing with various levels of government, like especially in the federal or provincial levels, that service levels they're struggling with regards to, you can't get a passport. Like there's certain things that are, we could go through all this motion and this exercise and investment, and then all we're doing is collecting data because we don't really have the commitment from the MTO to really enforce this to the degree that it needs to be enforced to make this program effective. One more question I have, my third and final, is what happens when everybody realizes the camera is on Victoria Avenue? What happens to the people in Jordan when they take Jordan Road instead?
Through you, Mr. Chair, great question. A couple comments would be, we're going to be monitoring Jordan Road. MTO will also be looking at, is there other areas where trucks are bypassing or we're seeing an increase? But the hope is too, the more messaging we can get out that we're really serious, we're taking this on, this is not okay in our community. Drivers may not get off the highway. If they know if they know there's gonna be cameras, and if they know MTO is gonna pursue them, stop them, you know, waste a lot more time of their route, potentially take them back to the inspection station. So, you know, that's what MTO is also anticipating as well. But it's a good point, we will be monitoring other potential roads if we see, you know, an increase in truck traffic.
Through you, Chair, that's the concern I currently have, as I'm already hearing it from residents living in Jordan on King Street or thereabouts about the increased level of truck traffic as it is. You know, without the implementation or location of a traffic camera on Victoria Avenue, possibly adding to that. So that's my concern. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Chair Patriva. Thank you, Director Graham, for this report. I want to commend you for the excellent working relationship that staff have with the local MTO office. That's a great thing to have. We are privileged in Lincoln. We have the only MTO, full-time MTO inspection station in the region. I think we forget that sometimes. The next closest is Oakville and Brantford. My concern is one of the lenses that we're missing when we look at the truck safety and bypass is our parameters of true numbers. So the numbers of unsafe trucks or bypass trucks compared to the amount of trucks that legally and safely traverse our roads every day and the amount of trucks that go through for inspection. And I like your comments on those, Director Graham. I realize those second numbers are hard to find, but I think we miss it when we don't base the numbers against something. So numbers that we've been given are actually trucks that have been pulled over and charges laid. And if we're going to try and I realize it's a hard task, but I think that's at least worth the look, is the percentage of true bypass to true going through the truck inspection station, and the number of trucks, which we have a lot of, travel our roads safely every day. Just looking for your comment on that, Director Graham.
Sure, and through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, I mean, it's a great point to raise. A few comments would be, yeah, there's a lot of trucks on our roads. Trucks are important for our community, our economy, and there's a lot of activity. We're an agricultural area. We have 2 quarries in our town, so we do have a lot of truck traffic in our community. Again, the focus of this program is, if you don't need to be in our town driving your commercial vehicle, we don't want you in our town, so the bypass trucks. But, you know, getting back to Councillor Reimer's comments, if you look at the volume of trucks on our roadways, and when we do these blitzes, how it works is MTO, they only pull over trucks that they suspect are either bypassing or might look unsafe, or they may have some suspected concern. And when they pull those trucks over, and we've been looking at the data, half of those trucks are inspected. So even though they pull a truck over, you know, after looking at it, maybe talking to the driver, they don't have a concern anymore, so then half of those trucks are inspected. And then when you look at the trucks that are inspected, only small percentages are actually pulled off the road or, you know, have significant defects. So I think, you know, it is a good reminder that, you know, we do have a lot of trucks on our roads, but from our blitzes, they're not you know, they're not alarming, you know, they're not like really unsafe, or the percentage is fairly minor. So, I mean, I think that is a good point to note, Councillor, and I think the inspection station does help that, right? You know, it does help ensure that there's safe trucks. That's the whole objective of it, so.
Yeah, thank you, Director Graham. I think as just by its location in the town of Lincoln, we have a safer, higher rating than the rest of the municipalities in Niagara region. I do support this report and the initiative. I'm an advocate for truck safety. I'm in the industry. But I think we do need to manage our expected outcomes of less truck traffic. As a council, we have established ourselves as one who is grounded and sometimes relentless when establishing definitives when we create policies. And I think the outcomes of this might be unmeasurable or inaccurate. I'm great with educating the stakeholders and the industry. Establishing truck routes are great steps, and starting to have a bit of an MTO database is great. And following up on what David, with Director Graham said, we have 3 active quarries in our town. We have one of the largest concrete plants in the region. We have several large logistics trucking companies in the town, farms, numerous greenhouses, nurseries, wineries, eating establishments that all depend on trucking 7 days a week. We need to be mindful of our stakeholders. We have to be careful with restricting local streets. But I say this only to ask the question, and I don't need it answered, but just, will we notice the difference? That's how much truck traffic's in the town of Lincoln all the time. So if we eradicate truck bypass, are we truly going to notice a difference? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Reimer. Mayor Easton.
Mr. Chairman, I see that Councillor Brunei has a question. I'm happy to wait.
Okay. Councillor Brunei.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor Easton. So I wanted to reinforce a comment that Councillor McPherson made. It was one of the questions that I had highlighted when I read the report. You know, in principle, I'm supportive of this 2-year pilot project. I do believe that the bypassing charges are something that we, you know, even though we're at arm's length from that, that's an MTO related initiative, but I think we need to know what those costs are, because, you know, if it's not significant, you know, these guys they're bypassing the weight scales for a reason. You know, whether they want a faster route or whether they've got actually a defection in something on the truck or licensing or permits or whatever. So if the charges are not significant, then they'll take the charge and they'll deal with the consequences. So I think that's something that we can't highlight enough. So I just wanted to reinforce Councillor McPherson's comment on that. Through you, Chair, one of the things that I think we need to be focused on before we kick off this initiative, and we've done this, Director Graham, you know, when we've done truck blitzes in the past, where it's very important that when we pull a truck off the road, that we've got a safe and convenient spot for that truck to be checked. I remember in the past, in years gone by, we'd pull them down here to Bartlett and pull them in by the water filling station, away from traffic, away from the public. So I witnessed firsthand during the blitz an MTO vehicle pulled over westbound, right in the middle of the road with 4-ways flashing, and a large 16-wheeler, 18-wheeler pulled over, you know, being interrogated, being questioned, being checked in the westbound lane. So what that means is all oncoming traffic is coming, and everybody's got to wait, and there's cyclists. Like, you know, it's Regional Road 81 is narrow enough. It was right around Tufford Road or Sand Road. You know, when I look at some of the pictures in the presentation, Director Graham, you know, some of these trucks are pulled over right in our downtown core in Beamsville, right by the CIBC Bank in front of the No Frills. Is that a safe spot to be pulling over a vehicle in our downtown core? So I guess, you know, if they're gonna get up Victoria Avenue and turn onto King Street, and we're gonna be snapping cameras and pulling them over because it's a second camera that's picking it up, you know, I think it's really important that we collaborate with the MTO to make sure that if they are gonna pull them over, it's not in the middle of a lane on a Regional Road 81, where we've got tractors, we've got cyclists, we've got everything. I mean, this is an accident waiting to happen, and I happened to witness that firsthand during the day of the blitz. So I think that's really important. I'm sure it's on your radar. I'm sure it's probably a discussion point. I don't see it in the report, but I think, you know, some of these areas where we're gonna pull over these trucks need to be identified, and that needs to be some of the spots where we do this interrogation to determine whether there is bypassing occurring. Thank you, Chair.
Yep, go ahead, Director Graham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Councillor, for raising that. That's a very good point to raise, because when we've been in discussions with MTO, that is an issue for MTO. Well, there's pulling the truck over is one thing, but they can't inspect it. It's not safe for their officers to inspect it, and that's why they have to take it all the way back to the inspection station. You know, one thing we've at least identified, and again, it's been in discussions with MTO, with our strategy for the Beamsville truck route plan, with Bartlett Road as an alternate truck route. We have identified that we would be looking at building a lay-by on Bartlett Road when we upgrade that in the future. And again, MTO, that was gonna be very effective. They could use that to pull a truck over and actually do a full inspection right then and there. But I hear you. I know that when they pull a truck over just to, get some facts from the driver or take a closer look, it can cause an impact to traffic. But MTO's more concerned about they need a safe area for their officers to have a closer look at the truck. So it is something top of mind, when we are rebuilding strategic roads. We've also talked to the region about this, for regional road rehabilitation, et cetera, looking at strategic locations where we could, construct a truck lay-by to get that truck off the road. And then you could inspect the truck right then and there. It'd be a lot more efficient. Currently, the MTO have to take that truck, escort it all the way back to the inspection station.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. So I do appreciate that response, but, by your own acknowledgement, Bartlett Road and that bypass are gonna be a few years down the road. If this pilot project is gonna be launched, over the next 2 years, I think this is something that needs to be identified now. I mean, to look at a lay-down area, 4 years down the road, that's great, but it's not gonna assist us in this pilot project. So I can't overemphasize, I think that's really something that needs to be looked at before this is launched. Like, we don't wanna be creating accidents. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Brunei. Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Director Graham, I need a little clarification on the process. The recommendation is that we receive and file, and yet it sounds to me like the report is setting everything up that needs to be set up for the pilot. And so, are you looking for an approval, or are you using the directions from the past as the approval to go forward with this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor. This is more of an information report to share with council what we're doing. The pilot program was approved in the 2022 capital budget, so we're working with that approved budget. But the intent of tonight is to share this information with council as an update.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that reminder as well. Mr. Chairman, everything that's being said tonight is vital to a change in behavior. I'm not using the word success because we may not quite know what that success is going to look like, but there are many parts to this that need attention. The first thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, I would add to this, to the recommendation, is that we should direct the CAO to, and I don't really need to have it written down, but we should direct the CAO to get in touch with CAO Trip from the region to ask them to share, and I'm gonna say 2/3 of the cost. Start with that and see what the response is. These are regional roads, as councillors have earlier mentioned. So I would certainly verbally direct Mr. Kirkopoulos to do that. Mr. Graham, also, I have a couple of names, and possibly Councillor Mikulik has names as well, that I'd like to provide you for you to check, for the staff to check personally, 2 on Green Lane, who have certainly experienced this, particularly at night. Now that you've done a great job fixing the manhole cover, it's not, the alarm isn't quite as loud, but they're certainly still experiencing it. So I have that information, and you can carry on with that. Mr. Chairman, the issues around the ratio of safe trucks versus the problem trucks is important. It's not so important to me right now, with all due respect, Councillor, because I want to see some data first, and I don't want that to be seen as any reason whatsoever not to go forward with this. And so, to that end, Mr. Chairman, I would also suggest that, and I have no idea what the cost of staffing for a quarterly report would be, but it would be very important. I see Mr. Kirkopoulos is now coming up live, so maybe he may have some comments as well, but I think having a frequent report till we start to get a handle on this and how it's working would be very important. There are going to be many moving parts to this. The most important is we recognize there's a problem, we're finding solutions, we're committed to fine-tuning those solutions with the partners. I want to thank the MTO absolutely for their for the vision that the current staff have, because there has been no progress at all on this until recently. And the last thing I would say, Mr. Chairman, is if the MTO and the Minister of Transportation, if it is their intention not to monitor what's going on with a scale that's very, very close to our community, then maybe they should move it. And so that's another reason why I think it's so important to see the MTO involved. So I would like to hear Mr. Kirkopoulos' response, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kirkopoulos, go ahead, please.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mary Easton and to members of council. So just a couple of points I think I'd like to highlight. One is we have an AMO delegation on this particular item. And so I think we can continue to bring awareness to our pilot and I think highlight in a lot of ways what makes Lincoln different, both in Niagara region and I would say in the broader GTA, when you look at Oakville and ourselves being the only fully manned stations kind of within the Golden Horseshoe, and then Brantford a little bit on the periphery. Secondly, it was already my intent to speak with CAO Tripp on this particular matter. I think, one of the things we need to have a conversation with the region on, and I understand that the region will take the position of regional roads are intended for truck traffic. I've heard that on some numerous times when I've talked to them about mountain. So I think I'm going to have to find a different way to compel, co-opt the region into supporting this pilot project. I think pilot projects are important ways for us to gather data. And, you've heard me say in the past, without data, we can't make informed decisions. And so I think from that perspective, getting the region to the table would be a positive thing, whether that's 2/3, 1/3. I would suggest that whatever the region's willing to contribute, I think will go a long way. But we do need to get over the fact that the region will tell us under no certain that regional roads are meant for truck traffic. So I have to find a way to make that argument to the region. I think another key point to highlight in this particular topic is, and we've seen experiences when we looked at thousands of trucks going on our roads to a particular business above the escarpment, which I won't name because it is subject to existing legal issues and legal cases that we have before the courts. But enforcement is key. So I've heard a lot of comments around enforcement. I think we need to continue to work with MTO around enforcement. We need to work with our partners at NRPS, who also assist us, and other police services when we do these sorts of blitzes. But it'll only be through enforcement that I think we find the ability to detract significant fines, as Councillor McPherson highlighted. Those fines, depending on what is found when a truck bypasses the scale, and then should that truck have safety issues, you can have fines up to $20,000 when you look at brakes not working and other things not being safe. So there are significant fines, but it really depends in each individual case what is found. So I hear council loud and clear in terms of wanting some cost sharing. We will endeavor to do that, but I also want to give council the realities of regional roads and the intent of those regional roads and what we're going to hear from the region. Notwithstanding that, I think it's an important program. We've made significant, I would suggest we've made significant leaps in addressing truck traffic in our community. And I think for that reason, this is a good pilot program, and the data that we get from this, I think, will go a long way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Your worship.
I have another point of clarification with Director Graham. Could you explain in a little bit more detail, when you talk about monitoring other highways, that's secondary roads, that's just secondary to the regional roads, what is it that you have in mind? And is it a planned, is it all planned out so that there's some rotation to the black cats or whatever device you decide to use? How do you plan to do that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the mayor. So what we want to do is, right now, we want to look at Green Lane, and we're going to put a black cat out there, and again, to collect data, to really see, you know, what is the truck activity when the scales are on versus when they're off, because that's another east-west bypass route. So we do have a plan or a list of potential bypass routes that we've, you know, gotten feedback. We've heard from residents around the community. You say you've heard from some as well on Green Lane. MTO has a lot of good history too, where when they're out patrolling on where trucks are potentially bypassing, like the North Service Road. That's another route. Councillor Mikulik highlighted Jordan Road. That's one I think we'll need to watch as well. And when we do our blitzes and working with MTO, they're also patrolling those roads, and we'll be in, you know, frequent communication with them on, you know, what are they seeing? Do we need to rotate our monitors around? So, you know, it's going to be very fluid, and we'll be able to respond accordingly to, you know, what we're hearing and seeing both from the MTO or even residents. We want to be responsive if we're getting those types of, you know, complaints or information or feedback. So, I don't know if I've answered the question specifically, but we do have a plan to respond. If we're hearing there's increased truck traffic, we're not anticipating it on certain routes. Green Lane, we want to learn more about and monitor it. So that is a planned data collection.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, so that tells me that the comment that was made by CAO Kirkopoulos is correct. Regional roads they're there for the movement of goods and services. And that's great. So however, if the rules are broken, Mr. Chairman, on the regional road, then we need to know exactly where those trucks are going on the secondary roads. And so the question really is how easy, that's a big job. And yet, it seems to me, Mr. Chairman, that as we collect data, as these tools become more sophisticated, there's probably a lot of other data that we can be collecting about who's actually traveling on the roads, just in terms of the way the town operates. Is that valuable information that can be conducted as you're doing this pilot as well?
Through Mr. Chair to the mayor, absolutely. We want to collect as much data as we can. The cameras are really our only tool to tell us, you know, from a documentation perspective, you know, where is that truck from based on its, you know, the image of the company, the license plate, and hearing that from MTO. The Black Cat monitors that we'll be utilizing just have the ability to collect truck traffic, like trucks. We won't be able to tell where they're from.
No,
or where
I
they're
understand.
coming from. But
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I think we're making great progress, and it sounds like we're on the same page to, you know, more degrees than others, but certainly making progress. And so I'm very supportive of this, and I think, but I would encourage you to report as often as you can. It'll keep us in tune for sure. Thank you.
Thank you, Worship. And when Director Graham and I were talking earlier about this file, he had wanted the MTO to be able to come and speak to this, because what this is a three-pronged approach that we're taking. So the MTO has the resources to provide the manpower to do the searches. We're working with the region to install the cameras. Mr. Kirkopoulos is going to go and see if we can get some money from them. And then our role is to put the cameras up with this state-of-the-art license plate reader. And then, you know, maybe on the next quarterly visit, they can come in, talk to some of those nuances of that, their intentions, fines and things like that. And if I've heard Mr. Kirkopoulos once, I've heard him maybe 100 times saying, we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem. So maybe he and Director Wagner can reach out to the province at our AMO discussion, and maybe there's a bit of cost sharing or a revenue stream on the trucks that are taken offline within this project, right? So we're going to help you do a little bit, but again, it's self-serving because we want to identify what's what. So we've won around once. We've got a couple counselors in. I again say it needs to be something new, not something rehashed. So Councilor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just very quickly, talk around the table, there seems to be really kind of some question as to how big is the issue, and I don't know if we know the answer to that right now. So I would absolutely support the mayor's comment around a more regular report, and if that report only showed the volume of trucks coming off the QEW the day of a waste station being open versus every other day, I think that'll tell us at a high level what is the size of the problem. So if we've got a report, and it could be simply an email to council. I mean, it doesn't have to be a formal report. Here's the results of the last 30 days. Here's the day that waste station was open. Here's the number of trucks that came up Victoria, turned on King Street. Okay, here's every other day to see, do we have an issue? You know, is it a big issue? The approach, you know, I'd suggest with the region is, let's talk to them now, tell them we're coming with a request, get the data and show it to them. So that 3 months down the road, 4 months down the road, okay, here's the data, we want your money. You know, so I think that if we need to make a motion.
So
I don't know if we
having
do.
said that, I was just going to dovetail off of you, yes, so the mayor brought it forward, so we are looking for a motion that gives direction to our CAO to go to the region. I don't like that feedback. Go to the region and say, we're looking for some cost sharing in this, so some support in this program, in this initiative.
But also that data collection and communicating that to us to see what is happening on those days the waste scale is open.
So would you?
Does that make sense?
Would
Do you want me to script that?
Yes, please.
Thanks.
Okay, Councilor McLeod. It's coming.
Thank you, Chair Patrieva, for a second opportunity. I'm still concerned. I mean, I have to wonder how we got to this place in the first place, and that is, you know, with this truck traffic, and we've done plenty of monitoring, and this is concerning to me. We've monitored Victoria Avenue for years. What happens to Jordan Road? I mean, like, I'm, you know, we're gonna monitor Jordan Road, and we're gonna be right back here doing the same thing. And I don't know the solution. I don't know what happens to Jordan through the intersection if we install these permanent type cameras. Like, should we be looking with this initiative to, similar to the success of speed cameras, moving these cameras, like not fixing it on Victoria Avenue and switching it from time to time to Jordan Road?
But to Councilor McLeod's question, the warnings, those warning lights that say the inspection station is open are located past Jordan Road. So you would pass Jordan Road before you get those warning lights then that the station is open. Well, okay.
10-4,
But
10-4, G.
But again, to Mr. Kokopoulos' point, Jordan Road is a regional road that's built for transportation of goods and services, right? So, and if it just shifts the problem, yes, we'll have to look at that, right, Director? But,
Yep.
you know, we're not going to make a presupposition that that's going to happen, right? So it's the science, it's the numbers that are going to dictate this, correct? So, if that helps.
It does and it doesn't, because I'm quite confident that both myself and Councilor McPherson will be receiving emails with regards to a perceived, which may not be accurate, increase in truck traffic.
Yeah.
So those are my concerns. However, that being said, I'm not opposed to trying something. I'm not opposed to giving it a chance, but I just want to make sure that, as you mentioned earlier, Director, that we're fluid in our response and that we make changes on the fly if needed, and immediate and swift. Thank you.
Mayor Easton.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I go back to Deputy Mayor Reimer's comment. The operative word here is manage, and that's what we're attempting to do. There's a lot of different parts to this. Some are going to work, some won't make sense as time goes on, just because they can't, by the nature of the way our town operates. But we're making a major attempt here to manage an issue, and to let some people know that they don't really need to be here. They need to conduct their business elsewhere. We certainly don't want to be penalizing people that are doing business in Niagara. That's not the intention. But if we don't start managing it, then it's just basically, the Wild West. And so this is going to get us closer to that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Devan, do we have a motion on this?
Hi, Chair, thank you. Yes, through you. Give me one moment and I'll share my screen.
Okay. Mr. Karkopoulos has his hand up, so go ahead. Mr. CAO.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think, I was just reading this as well. I think in the context of the second part of that motion, is it the town providing that data or the region providing us that data? But I think we can work on that and figure it out. I think my comment wanted to be, I agree with Councillor McPherson. The speed at which we can get you information if we did it in a memo and added it to council correspondence is probably a lot quicker and will allow us to be very nimble. And I think provide council with that information. And I think through regular reporting, if we see that there's some necessary improvements that need to be made, to Councillor Mikulic's point, and we're starting to see data show that trucks, not just perceived, seem to be going on different roads, but in actuality, then I think we can make that course correction that is required. So just those two comments. We can also make sure and work with Mr. Deanne and Mr. Graham to ensure Speak Up Lincoln has some information that's updated, and that regular reporting also finds itself there for the public.
Thank you, and through you, Chair, I've drafted the motion as shown on the screen, which is moved by Mayor Easton, and it is as follows: that the CAO of the town of Lincoln be directed to contact the CAO of Niagara Region to explore cost sharing opportunities of the pilot project, and that staff requests that Niagara Region to provide data on the pilot project to the town of Lincoln on a monthly basis.
Okay, 1 second. Councilor McPherson.
So here's what I have for the second part of that, that staff bring forward a monthly update showing truck traffic coming off the QEW at Victoria Avenue and turning west on King Street. This doesn't have anything to do with the region.
And the data is not coming from the region.
Exactly.
It's our data and it's MTO's data. Yeah.
You can have this.
Okay.
If you can read my writing.
And that is correct, Mr. Chairman. And furthermore, if there's any question about who's in charge of this process, then let's just ensure that we are in charge of it, even though people will question us being in charge of it. This is our town, and the use of roads is one thing, and the way things play out on the roads is another matter, and the safety of our community is another matter. So, and the economy of the community is another matter. So I think we own the data, and we need to make sure that everybody knows that we own the data.
Chair, through you, there's the revised motion. Would you like me to read it?
No, I don't think that's necessary. I think we can. Councilor McPherson?
All good.
Okay.
Yep.
So let's open the vote.
Sure, thank you, Chair. That vote is now open. Thank you. I'm going to close the vote, and that carries. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So does that make the motion by Councillor Russell redundant?
No, we still need to vote.
We still need to vote on that. Okay, so there being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Russell to receive and file for information PW 26-22 regarding the truck bypass camera monitoring pilot project update. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open. And I'm going to close the vote. And that motion is carried as amended. Thank you.
Thank you, Devan. We will now consider item 7.2.2, report PW-27-22 regarding single-use plastics reduction strategy, update report number 2. I will ask our climate change coordinator, Shannon Fernandez, to provide comment to this item. Shannon, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. This report provides an overview on the town's corporate and community single-use plastics reduction strategies and their development. While I'm the main facilitator in the development of these two reduction strategies, it does require contributions from multiple departments, and interdepartmental buy-in and collaboration is key to leveraging resources, meeting our shared goals, and successfully implementing the action items. It's been my pleasure to facilitate the development of these strategies and the Interdepartmental Steering Committee, which is represented by Shannon McKay, Director of Community Services, David Graham, Director of Public Works, Cameron Rotz, ECDEV Assistant, Jillian Harris, Associate Director of Public Works, Lawrence Wagner, Director of Finance, Administration and Innovation, Julie Andrews, CEO of the Lincoln Pelham Public Library, Mark Barkway, Manager of Municipal Law Enforcement, as well as David Warden, Manager of Public and Open Spaces. Since our last update, the Single-Use Plastic Steering Committee has made progress on the previously presented work plan. I've conducted both a staff and a public survey, a waste audit at the Fleming Center and Town Hall, as well as supported with the zero plastic and green bin pilots at the Rittenhouse Library branch. All of these investigations have provided the opportunity for the town to understand where we stand, to identify opportunities to address single-use plastics, and to make sure that we create a tailor-made to Lincoln solution and a solution that has the buy-in to achieve our goals and targets. It is important to have an overall understanding of the waste and recycling as replacements or alternatives to single-use plastics, as they shouldn't contribute to additional landfill waste. Using the information gathered through the surveys, pilots, and waste audits, we are happy to present in this report a long list of corporate single-use plastic strategies that the Single-Use Plastics Committee has identified, along with which departments or lead staff will be responsible for reviewing the feasibility of and then the impact of those actions. Through this process, I will be supporting the leads by providing best practices and contacts with other municipalities and experts to be utilized to perform their evaluations. As a committee, we will provide an update early in 2023, where the steering committee will identify what the recommended action items are from this list, as well as anticipated timelines and a draft corporate and community policy. I'll be creating the initial drafts of these two policies based off the input of the steering committee and the results of each department's respective feasibility reviews. And ultimately, the steering committee as a whole will determine the wording brought forward and recommended to council for approval. After approval early next year, individual departments and action leads will have ownership of the action items pertinent to their departmental roles and responsibilities, activities and budgets, and each department will be responsible for investigating those alternatives, implementations, staff and financial resources, and timelines. For example, community services would be responsible for any changes required to facilities. New bylaws will be the responsibility of the bylaw team, and so on. There will also be a number of action items that will be interdepartmental, and for those, I will be the lead facilitator and work closely with the appropriate committee and department members. It's important to remember that there is no one silver bullet for a single-use plastics action plan, but rather a number of initiatives and actions that can make a difference on the corporate and community sides. And in order to do this, we do have to work together as an organization and the community and with other levels of government. Since this report was written, the federal government has announced that a number of single-use plastic items have been banned and to be phased out of Canada over the next 18 months to allow businesses with the time to prepare. And all of this will be considered in the feasibility reviews of the long list of alternatives that are presented in this report. It's important to note that the federal plan addresses very low-hanging fruit and doesn't cover many of the single-use plastic items that the steering committee, staff survey, waste audits, and pilot studies have identified as needing to be addressed. For example, this includes single-use plastic cold drink cups and lids, beverage bottles, Ziploc bags. And again, our next update report will provide more details on how the town's corporate and community strategies and work plans will align with this new federal strategy and the leadership role that Lincoln can expect to play when addressing single-use plastics. We are making excellent progress on our previously presented work plan, and I'm excited to bring forward these updates as we work through the plan, and happy to answer any questions the council may have. Thank you, Chair.
Any questions to Ms. Fernandez? Councilor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you to Shannon and Shannon, both Shannons. So very pleased to see this report, and I would also say very, very detailed and very well thought through, very comprehensive report. You know, the list of, I counted 18 items on Appendix D is a lot. You know, it's a lot of change, and I understand that. But I think if we don't get it on a piece of paper and work towards it, we obviously won't get it done. So I commend the staff that have been involved in this initiative. You know, I think we're moving certainly towards a very favorable result. I just wanted to share publicly the comments from page 2 under the staff survey results. It states that findings suggest that a majority of staff are aware of the impacts of single-use plastics, would choose a more sustainable alternative if readily available, and would like to see more action on single-use plastics reductions. You know, I think that says a lot. It says, you know, it's all very, very good to moving, through the challenge. It also goes on to talk about some of those challenges, you know, the costs that may be involved, some of the competing priorities that each department would have, and what staff resources would be required. And I think that, you know, we would be not thinking straight if we didn't think some of those things are going to happen. I would just say that we need to, not necessarily do this all in one bite, that this probably would take, some time to move through all of what we're putting into our strategy here. But, I would encourage, the staff, and I don't see any reason why you wouldn't be, just keep on moving through it, keep on going, and by the sounds of what.
Councillor, is there a question coming here to Ms. Fernandez?
There was no question, just good job. Thank you.
Okay. Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Shannon and the team. This is, the depth of this and breadth of this program is bigger than Councillor McPherson's initial motion, because he only had a few words on that motion. We didn't know there were going to be 18 items that would be added to it. But that's the reality of it. I'm gonna mention page 47. On page 47, there's additional staff comments, and those comments have to do with the question, just comments in general that were made when people were being consulted. And so the question is really, here's a statement that alternatives are great, but it's really a culture buy-in that's needed, and it goes on. And I really agree with this statement, and it's a change with one person changing a few more people, and on it goes. So I know that the District School Board of Niagara and the Catholic School Board, a few years ago, September came and a message went out to the parents saying, this is how you're gonna handle your children's snacks and this and that and the other thing. And they just basically said, you have to take all your garbage home, but you also need to bring things in reusable containers. And it was like, bang, that was done. And I certainly stand to be corrected. But I would ask, have you talked with anybody else that's done this? Because maybe we're taking an approach that's a little bit too soft. Because that was a major, that was a sea change that they made. And it happened. And I don't know how perfect it was, but what does the CEO always said, that perfect is the negative of good. So maybe we could be a little bit more forceful about this in some areas. And I don't know that would hurt, but could you just let me know if you've checked out what other people are doing and I've just missed it in this report?
Through you, Chair. Yes, Mayor. So not included in this report because the survey was still open at the time it was written. But a public survey did go out to the community that requested their comments on single-use plastics, their usage both at home, in the workplace, as well as many of the similar questions that were presented in the staff survey. So readiness to adopt alternatives, perceived challenges and barriers as well. And that survey closed earlier, in about mid-June, and those results as well will be presented in upcoming project updates. And so being able to understand exactly what the community is, again, what they're using, what their challenges are, and where they would like to go is something that we are looking at. We've also looked at several other communities, municipalities, single-use plastics bans, as well as reduction strategies. And while they are mainly larger municipalities that have implemented these across the widespread across their municipalities, we are taking a lot of their best practices, and a lot of that is what informed our long list of alternatives. The long list of alternatives presented in this report is only corporate in scope, and the community plan will also include bylaws or other appropriate measures as well that the steering committee and the bylaw team will be working very closely to inform.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I really believe after the last couple of weeks of many of us spent a lot of time with the climate change summit and talking with other people, we had big discussions. This just comes up over and over. I would really recommend that we also check with the school boards to find out what was that response at the community level, to see what was good, what didn't work so well, and include that, because really, we're all the same people, whether we're here at work or whether we're at home. If we're practicing that at home already with our children, then we shouldn't really have a problem adapting in the workplace. So it's just it's a question and it's a reinforcement. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Worship. Councilor Renshima.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to add a little bit to what, I like where Mayor Eastern was going. My daughters went to Maple Grove School, and there, you didn't bring any garbage to school. And it was painful, but we did it day after day. We chopped up things and put them into little containers that had to go in the dishwasher at the end of the day. There was no packaged cheese, no packaged yogurt, no nothing. And the kids, they took pride in it, and they got a little sticker if they didn't have any garbage, and it worked well. It worked all the way from kindergarten to grade 6. And So, so getting kids behind it is great. And to this day, I still don't like making any garbage. I don't like it. I don't think my daughters do either, but I can't be sure of that.
Good for you.
Thank you.
Awesome, Counselor. And that's one of the questions, Shannon, that I had to you, that, you know, the report says it's going to come early in 2023. Things like central garbage recycling stations in public areas where you can take liquid out of coffee cups and isolate that, you know, public education campaign, because evidently we need to do that, because some think it's just a simple checkbox that council's trying to achieve. I took great offense to that. I'm the recycling warrior in our house, and I'm going through the garbage. I know you take the Ziploc bag, you cut the lock part off, and the rest is recycling. Wash that can out, take the label off it. You know, it's picked up once a week. We've got half a bag of garbage. So there's no reason, and everyone has a role to play. And, you know, we had the summits last week. So if we could get those items of low-hanging fruit as part of the budget and get them in, I think that would be an early win. So looking forward to that, Shannon. Hopefully you can make that happen, the two Shannons and your team, because you've got our full support on it. So, and like Mayor Easton said, you know, if we can do these things quicker and do them a bit more swiftly, then you've got our support. So if you can make it happen, and I see you nodding, I look forward to that. So
Thank you, Chair.
thank you. So, there being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councilor McPherson to receive and file report PW 27-22, Single-Use Plastics Reduction Strategy Update Report Number 2, and direct staff to research the feasibility of potential corporate-wide single-use plastic reduction actions and bring recommendations to Committee of the Whole, Community Services and Infrastructure in Q1 2023. I will ask our Deputy Clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. And I'm going to close the vote. And that motion carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Devan. So we will now consider item 7.2.3, report PW-25-22, electric vehicle chargers funding request. Do members of committee have any questions? Councillor Renchema.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is about whether I mean, it was a really interesting report, and I'm really excited about it. I have a couple of questions, though. One, did we look into the expense of solar-powered electric vehicle charging stations?
Who's going to take that? Director Graham?
Through you, Mr. Chair, if I could ask maybe Walter Neubauer to comment on that, please. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Good question, Councillor. Through you, Chair. At this point in time, we have not explored that option, but one of the objectives of this project will be to establish a steering committee of multiple stakeholders from various departments and external partners as well, to look at the program to see what the best options are for the installation of these electric vehicle chargers. So we will take that back to the group and we will respond. We plan to bring another report back to council after the steering committee has had a chance to develop an action plan and some more details to the program and the business model. And we can answer that question about the solar powered units further.
Okay, thanks. I think it'd be interesting to see how much they cost, and you know, I think there'd be advantage to them in the long run, clear advantage, if they're not ridiculously expensive. And I have another question. Mr. Chair, I have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. So I'm wondering about the location selection and what the criteria was. I know we want them to be accessible to the greatest number of vehicle owners, whether they be from Lincoln or visitors. I would think tourism is an important consideration in this, and I see that there are 9 proposed for the 19th Street Park public lot. Can you outline what went into that decision and whether tourism was a factor?
Yes, through you, Chair, to the councillor. The locations that have been selected were chosen by staff on a preliminary basis. We looked across the town where we thought it made the most sense. Again, the locations currently are not cast in stone, and the steering committee will be looking at those locations in a lot more detail to see and make sure that they do make the most sense, and that maybe there might be other locations across the town where maybe there might be a better opportunity for a couple of these units. So again, we will be reporting back to council with more details as to the location selection.
Yeah, thanks. I'm not particularly concerned about the proposed locations. I'm just wondering what went into it. So it's going to be an interesting discussion to see in the long run what goes into the decision of where they would go based on who uses them the most. But I think if you're coming from out of town and coming through town and you've got nowhere to charge your electric vehicle, you're going to hesitate about stopping. So we want to make sure that they're in places that people can find them easily if they want to come and enjoy our town, and then know that they can leave with a full tank. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You mean a full charge, Counselor, not a full tank? Okay, that was back to your greased elephant. I think it was more Sisyphus pushing the rock up the hill, but greased elephant, I had to work that back in at some point. Councillor Michalak.
Thank you very much, Chair Patriva, through you to staff, Walter. I'm going to look at this with a little bit of a different lens because I came from the oil and gas industry, so my apologies for not being so jumping on this so quickly. I'm looking at this report and I don't see, the province involved with helping fund this. Have we asked the province to chip in with this initiative that's important?
Not at this time, Councillor. We have not. This is a grant supported by Natural Resource Canada that we applied for and we got it. And so we're here tonight to ask council to support our contribution to that grant. Not to say that we couldn't ask for other funding opportunities in the future from other sources.
Okay, well, this concerns me because, we're a population of 25,000 people and we're expected to, or we're looking at contributing 2/3 of the cost of this. And I think this is quite expensive. And I'm not sure, I don't see a business plan that was presented prior to us reviewing this. I see that there's going to be one created following the approval of this, but I think before spending $205,000 taxpayer dollars, we need to know what the operational costs will be with these charging stations, as well as what the potential income is, because I can only comment to what I know based on my personal experience. And my personal experience, because there's nothing in the report that tells me, professional experiences, these charging stations are a lot of times are provided by public, by hotels, this sort of thing. My last experience, I was in a hotel, and I don't want to start storytelling, but I was at a hotel in Montreal with 10 charging stations, and there was no parking for my car, which was an efficient gas-powered car. And they said, just park in the charging station spot. Nobody ever uses those anyway. And I'm like, and I ask why, and it's because if you have to pay for charging, people choose to charge at home instead. So I don't know what the business model looks like for this ask. And with that being said, I just don't feel it's a municipality's responsibility to be the one to absorb such a cost when it's the federal and provincial governments that are, hoping or wanting this. And meanwhile, I'm thinking 205,000. I could see that money being spent somewhere else, such as paving a road that needs to be repaired, or repairing a sidewalk that people are tripping on, or creating a walkable path at this time. Not to say that in the future, there won't be a demand for this, but I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves in supplying this sort of thing as a municipality, because I don't think we're currently doing that. I don't think any municipality is providing gas stations for vehicles, because, you know, the only gas station in town closed up. So those are my comments, and I'm not at this time supportive of this initiative. And thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wagner, Director Wagner, you go first, and then we'll go to Mr. Kirkopoulos, because maybe you can alleviate some of Councillor Mikulic's concerns. So, Lawrence.
Through you, Chair Patriva, to Councillor Mikulic. Great questions. I asked similar types of questions in relation to this project. I think if you look at the business case, Walter's intending to have the user group look out to the costing and the modeling of such. I would, however, argue, coming from Conservation Halton, we actually did look at investing a lot of this infrastructure to try to draw in tourists, to try to draw in people into the community that would spend in their community. So sometimes you have to spend to actually get that kind of momentum. But going into your comment in relation to the hotel coming from the province, the BC government a few years ago, when they were first elected, pulled away all the supports for green vehicles and as such. And what happened essentially from that pulling of support or subsidies was the lack of sales in that market. But I fully expect that the federal government and the PCs will probably look to rescind or improve those kind of subsidies. So I do expect in the future, having this infrastructure, you'll see the growth in the green vehicle technologies coming to the town. And as I said, I think it's important to consider longer term rather than a one-time spend when you consider the tourism, the growth, drawing in people who actually drive the green vehicles into the community to enhance your tourism industries or your economic development activities within the town.
Thank you, Director Wagner. And just before I go to Mr. Kirkopoulos, they had Innovation Minister Vic Fedeli on CKTB today and talking about the investment that the province has made in growing these battery factories, $14 billion over the last 8 months, and the regeneration of Chrysler and Ford and General Motors into producing these electric vehicles. So I think it is the wave of the future, and it's coming. And I think, you know, we're maybe ahead of it, and I know we don't like to be trendsetters, but let's not be last either. So, Councillor Russell, before I go to you, and I've got yellow and green, so it looks kind of like a Christmas tree here. I'll go to Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Mr. Chair, just a couple of comments, and we can definitely share with Council. Council will recall the business case was provided to members of Council as part of our budget process, but Council pulled it at that time subject to funding, and that's why we're here in front of you. We can definitely send that back out to refresh members of Council's mind in terms of the business case. Second, I think it was highlighted that this program was funded by the federal government. One of the stipulations of the federal EV grant program is that we can't stack asks, at least in this particular program. And so by stacking, I mean, we can't have multiple levels of government funding it. There are a number of other programs, and I think as we've often said, we will look at other provincial funder opportunities as we move forward. You know, on the EV cars, and I think, you know, Mr. Deanny and I see Brittany here as well, can speak about the tourism element of it. But a number of tourism regions and districts throughout this province are going in this particular direction when you look at the individuals that are seeking to come to our communities, shop in our communities, and spend money in our communities. And I've talked to a number of winery owners who are supportive of this particular program. I think we all know that EV cars are a growing segment of the car sector, and as Lawrence highlighted, I think that will continue. More and more people are buying them, and you know, I'm not going to suggest gasoline ever becomes obsolete, but we do need to, I think, look at programs like this. And I I would hazard to suggest that municipalities do play a role in leading, no different than the conversation we've just had on single-use plastics, which end up costing money and impacting the way we do business. So does looking at green technology and a number of the other initiatives that we have. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councilor Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to staff. Again, I think I did have some of the same concerns that Councilor Mikulik had about the business case and the rationale around it. And I'm wondering if, as part of that future staff report coming back, if staff may also include some of the longer term strategies of some of those main motor companies that I think most of them have set benchmarks for themselves to phase out combustion engines, or a clear delineation of infrastructure and investment into EV cars as opposed to combustion engines over the next 10, 20, 25 years. So just so we can see the trends of where we are going to help support the initiative overall. My main question though, and I'm wondering, just I don't know if Walter can answer this or not, what's the average time to get, I'm going to say maybe a half a charge on an EV car at one of these locations? How long would it take? Any insight or any idea?
Through you, Chair. I know that we're installing the level 2 connectors. I think I read something along the lines of, I'm just trying to think about it here. I think it's like 40 kilometers over 4 hours or something along those lines. But we can provide those details in the summary report exactly. What the details are for how long does it per hour, like how many kilometers of distance you can get on average per hour of charge. So there's different types of chargers. We're going with the level 2 connector chargers, and so that information is available, and I can respond back in the report.
And I appreciate that. And through you, Mr. Chair, again, I do understand it is a longer time frame to do a substantive charge. And the reason I ask that, and I bring up that point, is when we're looking at the location of the proposed units, I have some concerns about the ones that are going to be at Town Hall for two reasons. One, again, there is a possibility that Town Hall may not be at Town Hall somewhere down the road. So I'm wondering if it's really a worthwhile investment to put something there that might be temporary. And two, again, as much as we have a lot of fine people at Town Hall, there isn't a whole lot around there for people to do while their cars are being charged. Like all the other locations, you've got downtown Beamsville, you're going to have downtown Jordan area where there's shopping, there's other amenities that people can go around and visit while their cars are being charged. Town Hall, there's not a whole lot in the walking distance. I guess you could walk a kilometer and a half, maybe go into Beamsville, but I just don't know if people would do that. So I'm wondering what the utilization rate of those would be, and maybe if they would be more aptly suited somewhere else where there are more amenities around, as opposed to the highway and a couple of town buildings.
Through you, Mr. Chair, sorry, I'm going to chime in as well to Councillor Russell. Just for a correction, the level 2 chargers give you approximately 50 kilometers in an hour, so you can level that up. In regards to the chargers that are at Town Hall, and sorry, Walter, for stealing your thunder on the answer. It's one, they can also be relocated if we do relocate, but it could also be intended for staff. We do have staff that do have some electric vehicles. We also have the soccer field that's there as well. So when some parents that will be bringing their kids to play at the soccer field there, they can also get some level of charge as well while they're waiting in that location. So there are options to consider, both kind of in the immediate term and then in the long-term range as well.
And thank you for that, and I appreciate that comment. And my just last comment on that, Mr. Chair, to Jillian. Again, knowing that most people that own the vehicles have a charging station at home, including staff and those that might be playing soccer locally, if we are trying to utilize these stations for tourists and people coming from outside of Lincoln to visit our great community, some of our businesses, again, I'm just wondering if there's not a better place that we can put those 4 stations. again, down the road, if we do migrate to a new town hall in central Beamsville, obviously that would check all those boxes. And if they are easily mobile, again, maybe that also answers that. But just food for thought.
Yeah, and
Thank
that's,
you, Mr. Chair.
and Councilor Russell, that was one of the first things that Walter said, is that the steering committee would evaluate the potential locations, that these were just, temporary. So the grant is 21, so they've listed out 21, but they would dive further deep into it to see if, those are the right spots. So I had the same question, so thank you for that. Councilor Timmers.
Very much, Chair Patriva. So through to staff around to Mr. Neubauer, perhaps, on the user fees. I'm just curious, do we have an amount what the fees would be?
Director Wagner.
Oh, Director Wagner.
Through you, Chair Patriva, to Councilor Timmers, I was not going to answer the question on the fees. I think that would be coming from the business, like the business unit, the discussions to figure out how we can recover our costs, our operating costs, and the capital costs going in. But I was going to expand on Councilor Russell's question earlier, because it was a great question. It's actually something I did ask Walter and Jillian on. And it was, besides the relocation of the units, and I did ask specifically about people coming into town hall, paying a bill that they wouldn't be here long enough to actually get a charge. And we do have the soccer fields, as Jillian mentioned, but we're also gradually looking at shifting our vehicles over to more hybrid and electric vehicles. So when you consider town hall, you can't just consider the visitors coming in, you have to consider the uses for our own fleet. And our fleet will eventually shift to more electric. So having that infrastructure here will allow us to possibly shift to that kind of option in the future as well.
Thank you, Director Wagner. That makes perfect sense to me, having a charging station for town hall vehicles. So my only question, I know we've talked about the location already, but I just want to put it on the table that I think it would be very important to have one or two within Vineland, because it seems we're jumping right over Vineland. And if this is something we're looking at for the future, there's a lot of growth and changes that are going to be coming to Vineland. So I would certainly like to see one there. And I'd suggest perhaps the town public parking lot right on Victoria Avenue would be a very good place. People could walk to quite a few different restaurants and stores, and while they're waiting for their charge. So I would just like to have that noted. Thank you, Chair Patriva.
Thank you, Councilor Timmers. Councilor Reimer.
Thank you, Chair Patriva. Through you to staff, related to some of the councilors that came before me with regards to location, but my comment is more directed to upcoming developments, and I'm thinking specifically of Rittenhouse Library, Jordan Arena. Are we having the infrastructure put in ahead of time rather than refitting later? A good chunk of cost of these projects is you're hacking up real estate, pavement and landscaping and having to make it look pretty again. So are we incorporating some of the underground infrastructure at least into some of our plans, even some of the developments, Prudhome's or the ones coming up in Beamsville? Are they being incorporated so that in future, if we do a need for it, some of that stuff is there already? I see Walter.
Yes, thanks, Councillor. Through you, Chair. I can comment that as part of the Jordan Village project, we have had that foresight and we have installed some of the underground infrastructure that's going to be required to support it in those locations. Again, I will comment back to, we are going to be establishing a steering committee with members from every department within the town, including the planning team. And so we'll definitely take those comments back and make sure that when we're looking at future development, future capital projects, community services projects, that we are looking ahead to installing EV chargers and other green technology as part of those projects.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilor Reimer. Councilor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I too have some questions, and obviously I'm all in, for the whole push for climate and climate change and doing what we can do to reduce our carbon footprint. But, when I see the report and see that we don't really have any data on usage of existing public stations, that maybe you've talked to Clarington and find out what the usage is that they're seeing. Because I think there is a valid question about what kind of usage you would get during the day or evening. When you think about 50 kilometers for an hour of sitting on that piece of equipment, it really doesn't give that driver much more unless they were, going shopping for an hour. They may as well hook up and then leave. It's the convenience of hooking up that would really be attractive. It's not they're going there to charge their car, because that would be 10 or 12 hours of charging. So, I know that we've got a chunk of, or $100,000 that is in front of us, but it's going to cost us $200,000 to get that $100,000. And I really wonder about usage. I would have liked to have seen a proposed user fee, and then again, what are communities with user fees seeing for usage? So I think there's sort of there's a complex question as to whether or not those stations are going to actually see usage. Nice that we would have them, but it also would take up parking spots that may be of value if we don't have electric cars in them. So I'd rather see this report come back and have more information regarding the user fees, proposed user fees, more information about usage from other communities of their charging stations. And, I know we're on a timeline. I think it's the end of August that we have to make this decision, but I think it's important, an important decision for us. And, as we've heard, it is a substantial spend to play, so to speak, to get that money to come in. So those are my thoughts around the report, Mr. Chair, and I guess I'd like to see it deferred and come back.
So if that's the case, Councillor, are you prepared to make a motion for that?
Sure.
Okay. Let me just get through the other couple questions.
Mr. Chairman, would you just have the procedure on it? You may not be able to speak and
Deputy Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. If the motion to defer is on the table, then we're speaking to the deferral motion.
Okay.
Counselor, when would you like to?
Okay.
Sorry,
that's-
just to clarify, Chair, you're withdrawing, no, you're not putting that forward.
No,
Thank you.
he's, okay. So Councillor Brunet?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So I didn't chime in earlier because I wanted to hear what my other colleagues had to say about this report. When I read this in preparation for the meeting, I want to be fully supportive of something like this, but I look at the cost, and I'm questioning just, if this is a little bit premature. I want to be respectful of the proposed timelines and the money that we have, that staff has received from Natural Resources Canada. But I just, you know, $204,000 is a lot of money, and it just, you know, I want to make sure that, you know, we're doing the right thing in terms of locations and the commitment that we're willing to make at this time. I'm wondering, Chair, through you to Mr. Neubauer, have we collaborated with some of the proponents throughout the municipality that like public that have electric charging stations currently, like Bench or Redstone or Metrolinx, anybody that currently is using it? Have we got any data from any of those public establishments in terms of usage or hits on that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair. I know we've collaborated or we've chatted with another municipality. I'm not quite sure if we've reached out to individual businesses within the community. I know Michael and Shannon are here as well. If they have that knowledge that they've reached out, but I don't believe that that is the case at this point. Again, the idea was or is to develop a steering committee with internal and external stakeholders to work as a team and as a community to figure out the best location and the best technology to get the most out of this program and this funding that we've been provided.
So just a follow-up question through you, Chair. So similarly to Councillor Timmer's comment, Councillor Rinjam and I were sitting on this side of the table, you know, thinking, you know, pondering the use of electric charging station in town owned parking lots such as Ranny Square and the area that we just redid in the parking lot off of Hickson Street. You know, these are some areas where we could, you know, generate some revenue. So I want to support this. I realize it's time sensitive, but a big part of me is going, I think it's premature for the dollars that we're looking to commit. Thank you, Chair.
Mm-hmm. And again, too, the locations aren't written in stone, correct? So to speak.
That is correct.
So they can be further massaged. Okay. Councilor Renchma.
Almost touched the button. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Don't touch the button.
Don't, I almost did it. You know, I really love this, and I think it's important that we, you know, I mean, we've heard, we always kind of grapple with that, or we often grapple with it. What do we do at this level to make sure that some of the things that are really important globally happen? So we've all heard the think globally and act locally, so that's really what I think about when I look at this. As far as usage, when I hear people talk about that, I think about my time on the Joint Accessibility Advisory Committee, and you'd hear people say, well, you know, I don't know why I need a wheelchair ramp in front of my business because nobody in wheelchairs ever comes here. Well, they don't come here because there's no wheelchair ramp. So, you know, it's kind of hard to, I mean, I think it would be really interesting to look at the data in some of the electric vehicle charging stations that we see on private property and see what the usage is. I think that's important too. But I think it's also important to think ahead and to anticipate that we're going to have cars with that need to be charged coming into our community. And I'd love to be able to figure out a way to make this happen. And then further, this is a question, bit of a suggestion, but I don't know much about what the fees would be or what they are in other municipalities, but would it be possible to have a user fee that would also anticipate future the existing capital cost and future capital costs for replacement and have a reserve to replace them in the long run? And that way the costs for us are minimal.
I can answer that question through you, Chair. To the councillor, we have looked at another business model, and the intent is that the fee structure that would be developed for the user fees would be for cost recovery to cover the costs of these units, future maintenance of these units, replacement of these units. So there is some framework available to us that we can look at, but that is the intention, would be to develop a business model where these units would, we would charge fees to recover the costs for not only operating expenses, but also future maintenance expenses.
Mm-hmm. So similar to when we put in all the LED street lighting, our anticipation. We looked at how long it was gonna take us to get the money back, and that's why we did it. It made sense financially. Thank you.
Mayor Easton.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. There's some very good points that have been made here. I have to ask the question now. What are the priority asks after all this discussion? What do we think the priority asks are of staff, besides reviewing the locations? Did you catch all those?
Well, I
Mr.
think,
Neubauer?
well, and what I think I've heard is that, you know, committee and council is looking for, you know, the type of uptick from the local businesses and the MTO on what they're charging usage is. They're also looking for the Clarington model, what that fee structure is, what their uptake is. And I also think that they're looking for, and again, we've said time and time again, you know, a little input on the locations, because there's some toing and froing there. So that's what I've gathered. Walter?
Yes, Chair, that's what I've heard.
Okay.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad that's clear, because those are pretty focused. Mr. Chairman, you know, one of the benefits of the eScribe system is that you can add previous reports as appendices, and having the original business model that came through at budget time as part of this report would have been perfect, because we could then have tailored our questions against the original business model and potentially, you know, asked for additional information around that. I think that would have been great. So if those are the priority asks, so we need to know how soon can we get feedback on that. And then secondly, is there any chance at all, and I know that requests for timing are not unheard of, do we think that there could be modifications made to the timing, the August timing, or does that have something to do with the Elections Act? Could we just have that clarified? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Chair, to the Mayor, we have been in consultation with the funding agency. We can take this back and we can ask for an extension until we can have enough time to develop the report and the information that you're looking for to make a decision.
Okay, so Mr. Chairman, just to finish up with to make sure that everything's going to be whole at the end of this, I just would like to clarify with the clerk that there isn't going to be any limitation as part of the Elections Act in terms of us dealing with this in August sometime or
Jillian?
September.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. We can ask for the extension
But
from
it
the
may not
federal
be granted.
government, but they may not grant it.
Yes.
No, I understand.
And and our clerk said we've got 2 meetings within that time frame.
Yeah, one other thing that I would like to note as well, and I'm not entirely sure, unfortunately I didn't work specifically on this application, but a number of other federal grant applications that we do apply for specifically ask for our production on previous grants and how we've used the money and how successful the projects were. So I do worry that if there is a decision to turn down this funding, if we did apply for future funds through that ministry, that there may be implications. I can't guarantee that would be the case because I don't know exactly how the application form was set up, but it is another risk just for council to be aware of.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'm just looking for a modification, not to kill it, but to ask for an extension because we need a little bit more information. We have a great track record on these things. Surely that has to count for something.
Okay. Ms. Baslewski, I see your hand up, and then Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Thank you, Chair Petriva. I think I would be remiss this evening if I didn't bring to council this evening an advocacy for the sector in which I represent. Our tourism partners have had a very long 2 years during the pandemic. And if we've seen any growing trend in our industry right now, it's all about purpose-driven travel. Folks are looking for wellness vacations. They're looking to make informed decisions of the green shoots, green destinations that they're coming to. I also would urge council to be considerate of the cost of the barrier to entry by instituting a user fee. in using these charging stations in some of our highest attraction areas, such as Jordan Village. I think of our friends down to the downtown bench, Beamsville, BIA. We don't want to put any impetus on consumers for wanting to experience and enjoy our destination, especially when they're making responsible decisions on how they're choosing to travel to Lincoln. We've also hitched our wagon to being Niagara's other natural wonder. So I think about our incoming potential Niagara Geopark that will be recognized as part of the UNESCO biosphere. It seems counterproductive for us to thwart a green initiative of this value that can bring about significant economic impact in growing our destination as a green destination here in Lincoln.
Okay. Thank you very much. Mr. Kirkopoulos.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I guess a couple of comments. We can definitely take that information back, but I would suggest that looking at previous data over the last number of years probably isn't reflective of what we're going to see in the future, or what the future will look like, in so much as the previous provincial government, probably about 4 years ago, I think, as Director Wagner highlighted, killed the program. I do anticipate that they're bringing the program back, but simply looking at the past to be reflective of what the future will hold, I think it isn't as accurate data as I think Council will want to see. I think we all know that there's going to be growth in the electric market moving forward. And so I think what you're going to see is instituting programs, again, by both levels of government now moving forward, that we'll see EV vehicles increase. The other comments were already made by Ms. Harris and Ms. Paslewski, and so I won't belabor those particular comments, but to simply suggest looking at Clarington, which is not Lincoln, and looking at other particular places over the last 2 or 3 years when a program was killed by this PC government, it is not really an accurate depiction in my view. Now, I'll also say that I get anytime we ask members of council for money, and we are in front of you numerous times asking for support and funding of programs, it's not an easy decision. So I don't make my comments lightly, but I do highlight that looking at data to make a decision over the next 3 or 4 weeks probably won't yield council what you're hoping.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you very much, Chair Patrick. I don't want to carry on with this as well either, but the question I have is, there's a specific number, 21 chargers. How, and through the conversation that we're having tonight, it seems like there's 4 here, 2 there, 8 there, 9. How did we come up with that number of 21 when we're not even sure if we really need 1 at Town Hall?
That was the minimum to apply for the grant.
That was the minimum? Okay. My apologies. I did not know.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Sorry for posing that question.
Quite all right, Councillor, quite all right.
I should have read closer.
Well, that's okay. That's why you got me here. Okay. So, there being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councillor Brunet to receive and file report PW-25-22 electric vehicle chargers funding request, and that council approve funding the electric vehicle charging stations project as outlined in this report. I will now ask our deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open. I'll now close the vote, and that motion carries. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Devan. We will now consider item 7.2.4, request for use of Charles Daly Park licensed event, CS 11-22. Do members of council have any questions on the Go Sip event and the Canada Summer Games? Councillor Mikulik.
Thank you very much, Chair Patrick. Just a question to staff, and it's a little bit outside of these 2 specific events, is in looking at the various venues that the town of Lincoln has available, why is the Jordan Museum not part of that as a possible location for a licensed event? Is it?
Shannon, go ahead.
I
Yeah.
didn't see that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the counselor, it is part of being able to host a licensed event and have a special occasions permit.
It's just the numbers that we're looking at for these two events. We need the larger area of Charles Daly Park, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So it has, the museum has the ability to host those events, and there's also a catering contract set in place to provide food at that event,
Okay,
or at that site, I mean, sorry.
I somehow saw in the report there was a list of locations, but I did not see, I see Lincoln Community Center, Fleming, Beamsville Lions Park, Jordan Lions Park, Jordan Lions Arena, Library, Charles Daly Park, all fire stations. It was on page 2 of 6.
Ms. McKay, is that just, what would be the rationale there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the bylaw needs to be updated to reflect the new museum.
There you go, Counselor.
All right.
That list is in reference to the bylaw, the existing bylaw right now.
Okay, perfect.
Terrific.
Just clarification.
Yep, nope, thank you very much. So, there being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councilor McPherson to receive and file report CS 11-22 regarding the request for use of Charles Daly Park for licensed events, and approve the use of Charles Daly Park to host licensed events on August 7th, 2022, and October 1st and 2nd, 2022, as described in the report, and to provide staff with delegated authority to approve licensed events in all designated spaces, both indoor and outdoor, as outlined in the current alcohol use on municipal property policy, as attached as Appendix A, which will be updated. I will now ask our deputy clerk to call it the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. Thank you, and I'm going to close the vote, and that vote carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Devan. And our final report tonight is item 7.2.5, Fire Department Rescue Truck Purchase, FS 01-22. Do members of committee have any questions? I see none, so there being no further discussion, I have a motion moved by Councilor Reimer to receive and file report FS 01-22 regarding the purchase of a new fire department rescue truck, approve the award of a contract through the LAS Canoe Procurement Group Cooperative Purchasing Agreement Program to Safe Tech Emergency Vehicles Limited in the amount of $891,126, excluding HST, to supply one new 2024 Spartan rescue truck, and that the purchase be funded from the Infrastructure Reserve Fund, and to direct staff to dispose of the old rescue truck upon delivery of the new truck and transfer the proceeds of that disposal to the Infrastructure Reserve Fund. I will now ask our deputy clerk, Councilor Bernay, sorry. Before Devan calls it the vote, Councilor Bernay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And sorry for the late notice. I would be remiss, I seem to recall in my memory bank a number of years ago, us having a situation with procurement that was being done in the US. So I'm just making sure, I'm sure Mr. Wagner and Terry and everyone are all over this, but this number here, this is Canadian dollars?
I can answer that through you, Mr. Chair. This is Canadian dollars, yes.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, so Deputy Clerk, is the vote open?
I will now open the vote. Thank you, Chair.
Terrific.
And I'm going to close the vote, and that motion carries. Thank you.
Fantastic. There being no additional reports to consider for the Community Service and Infrastructure Committee agenda, we've now concluded that portion of tonight's meeting. We will rotate and allow Councillor and Chair Tony Bernay to assume the chair at this time for the Planning and Economic Development Committee agenda. But before doing so, we will take a 10-minute break to have some refreshments and bio break. So thank you.
We are now at the Planning and Economic Development portion of the agenda. 8.1 delegations. There are no registered delegations this evening for the Planning and Economic Development Committee agenda. Reports, 8.2. We will now consider item 8.2.1, Community Improvement Plan Review, Financial Analysis, and Draft Attainable Housing and Mixed-Use Community Improvement Plan. Wow, that's a lot. AD-11-22. Prior to proceeding with the staff presentation, I will ask that council proceed with the majority vote to extend the speaking time. And I have a motion moved by Councillor Pachariva. The council extends the presentation until completed. And I will now ask your deputy clerk to open the vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote's now open. I'll now close that vote, and that motion carries. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Our Director of Special Projects, our Director of Economic Development and Communications, our Director of Planning and Development, and Director of Finance, Administration, and Innovation will now provide a presentation with the Chief Administrative Officer providing some opening remarks. Mr. Kirkopoulos, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and to all members of council. We are pleased to be here this evening, and I'm pleased to be here with my colleagues to really discuss with council the next steps on our CIP journey. As you highlighted, this will be a joint presentation with Directors Wagner, Bruder, Deanne, and Dale. I'm going to cover a little bit of the agenda and a couple of opening comments and take you through the first number of slides, and then I will turn it over to staff. We have been through a number of touch points on our review of CIPs. In a lot of ways, we've had these conversations amongst ourselves. We've had them with experts and municipalities around us and outside of the region and those that we compare ourselves to. And we've also had them with almost all members of council as we went through this journey. I'll take you back and give you a little bit of history. Council wanted us to review and update our CIPs to reflect the current market conditions as it pertains specifically to residential development. Before you this evening, you'll see are our draft findings and our recommendations on how to move forward, part of which will be stakeholder consultation. Kathleen's going to reiterate for you, but I want to be clear. You're going to see in this report a few times, staff are proposing to not, and that's not incentivize straight up residential development. That's a key part of this. A lot of this conversation had stemmed around that over the last number of years. And the reason we believe that is that market conditions no longer require it. This has changed since even the start of this term of council. Markets change and we need to adapt to that change. You're going to see us talk about a focus on affordable housing, commercial development, industrial, and other non-residential grants. And that really is where the future of our CIP program is going to move. Staff want to make sure that our CIPs are feasible, sustainable, and beneficial for Lincoln. And I know Director Wagner will take you through that conversation on feasibility and sustainability when we get to the financial piece. This really is the way forward to ensure that we can do that. So I'm looking forward to the discussion and thank you to members of council. A little bit of background here in terms of when we were directed to look at this in this particular slide. October 21st was really when we reported on the performance of the existing programs. And then shortly thereafter, in February of 2022, we talked to you about best practices and some survey results. So as I highlighted, we are going to talk to you about financials and the financial analysis. Some minor changes we want to make to some of our existing programs, specifically around industrial and rural CIPs, as well as our heritage grant programs. And again, we'll spend some time on housing and mixed use to replace the current CIP program. Next slide. Our agenda tonight, as I went over here, we'll take you through the various elements. Next slide. A little bit of a summary here, as I highlighted in my opening comments. Only attainable housing is going to be incentivized. So when we talk about residential development, Only that is attainable, affordable, and the various phraseology and terminology as we define it will be incentivized. No other residential of any sorts. That's highlighted there because, again, I think that's a key takeaway that I want to leave council with. You will see us when we looked at mixed use in the past. The entire building, if you were providing mixed use and commercial opportunities, was incentivized. Now only the commercial floor. We also have put into this program conditions to ensure rental units remain attainable and are held for a minimum time for the first purchaser to retain ownership. I know this was something a number of members of council highlighted, Councillor McPherson, Councillor Brunet, as well as others when we discussed these particular topics. Where commercial floor space is increased, where tourism accommodation is provided, we're going to look at our TIG percentages and gradually see an increase there. There will be minimum criteria. We are looking at maximum grant repayments as part of our TIG programs. And again, as I highlighted, we're going to make some tweaks to our industrial and rural CIPs as well as heritage grants. Next slide. So I think this is an important slide. There's often a number of debates happening. There are debates happening around us in St. Catharines most recently, as well as a number of other communities, both inside and outside of Niagara. And I keep highlighting just outside of Niagara because we also compare ourselves to other tourism regions when we looked at what was happening. And some of our programs, when I think of some of the things we're doing around our rural CIPs and the value added piece, how we look to support and incentivize those, we are looking at places like Prince Edward County, Windsor, Essex, other wine regions. So why should Lincoln continue with CIP programs? Previous slide, please. Yeah. I think a lot of what you see here really speaks to the why. I'm not going to go over each one, but I will highlight a few that I think are key and timely. Our historic properties and structures. We've often heard from residents the importance of supporting them when they look at that adaptive reuse and restoration. You've heard us talk about open spaces, pedestrian networks, community infrastructure, so I won't go into that. Accessibility, a topic that's becoming more and more important, and I know Councillor Rujima, who's our representative on numerous accessibility committees, does continue to bring this to the forefront in terms of improvements to buildings that need to be made. Remediation and redevelopment of environmental contaminated properties. We don't have a lot of brownfields in our community, but we do have a few. And so looking at the appropriate studies to get those off the ground and looking at how we support them is also key. I think Mr. Deanny and Brittany and the team have spoke to you at length about the importance of job retention, attraction, and tourism accommodations. And I really think what we put in front of you is very much a made in Lincoln option. It is very tight, it's very streamlined, and we look forward to council's questions and comments this evening. Next slide. So I think this next slide, I will hand it over to the other presenters to take you through this.
Thank you, Mike, Mr. CIO. As part of this, we've got a new CIP program. The intent is that this new CIP program will replace 3 of our existing CIPs. So as Mike mentioned, there's no intent to incentivize your standard residential development. It's only anything that is attainable. Attainable is another word for affordable housing, but it sounds much nicer than affordable housing. We've come up with a list of programs that we want to do to promote and support priority development and also revitalization, and we've aligned these with council's priorities. One of the really important things, and we did find this in looking at a lot of the newer CIPs, there is a lot of focus on affordable housing. A lot of that is to do with, the rental and the ownership market these days. What we've come up with is a list of programs to encourage attainable housing. And those could be things such as 1 unit within a secondary dwelling unit to a larger housing development or even purpose-built rental. There is a real lack of accommodation for purpose-built rental in the community. As Mike mentioned, there is a need to support tourism accommodation and increasing agriculture value-added uses, and as well as building improvement projects for those uses. We don't have a lot of brownfields, but we do have some, and some will show up from time to time. People, as a result of doing some studies, will find that their site actually is a brownfield site. We need to support our downtown areas, and those include things like, people fixing up their facades or storefronts, improving their streetscape, improving the built form of their buildings, as well as you do have existing, commercial, industrial, and institutional buildings, and supporting changes of use of those buildings, reuse of those types of buildings. So in regards to the draft CIP, there's a number of goals established within that CIP. Again, increase the supply of affordable housing. For committee's information, the numbers that we have right now are based on 2021 figures, and we do get that information from the region of Niagara. So a one-bedroom apartment, for example, would be considered affordable if it was rented for $1,011 or less. And that's as I mentioned, that's 2021 dollars. Hopefully we'll have some figures for 2022. For attainable ownership housing, the maximum purchase price is $468,000. So it is quite low. I think that will be a challenge, but those are the figures that have been established by the region at this point in time. As I mentioned previously, we do need to increase the supply of rental housing, particularly some of the smaller units. I mean, there are some houses out there. There are newer townhouses. There's now some newer apartments that have been built that are being rented. But there is, when we look at the CMHC data, which is Canada Mortgage and Housing data for vacancy rates, our vacancy rate is rather low. We do need to increase the amount of commercial floor space. So by doing so, that increases your commercial assessment. It also creates jobs in your communities. We have a number of buildings within our commercial areas, and there have been people in the past that have done improvement to those buildings, and that should be continued. We don't have a lot of what I would call tourism accommodation in this area, other than small B&Bs. There really is a need to increase things like the construction of hotels. The reasoning for that is really so that people who come and stay here will stay longer, and they'll spend more money at our local businesses, and there's a spin-off effect from that. And of course, with any CIP program, it's also important that everything that you do has exceptional urban design. We've also included within the CIP programs some green infrastructure and climate change initiatives within projects, so there are criteria for that. As well, this CIP supports improvements to the public realm. So your public realm are your streetscapes, your open space areas, your areas around the buildings. They're the things that the public first looks at. So it's important that those areas are improved. So in regards to the draft CIP, the committee may recall that last year the region revamped all of their incentive programs. Their four categories are attainable housing or affordable housing, industrial development, brownfields, and the public realm. This particular CIP is aligned with three of those being attainable housing, brownfields, and the public realm. But we've also got the industrial and rural CIP, which is aligned with their employment category. We also have a separate category, which is the commercial and mixed use. So these are the four program areas that are identified within the CIP. So in regards to this draft CIP, each of these program areas have individual incentive programs. So some of these programs are completely new. Some of them relate to programs that are already either mandated by the Development Charges Act or they're within your current Development Charges bylaw. They've been included really for information because I think with any applicant, it's helpful to have as much information as possible. And then there are some new programs. So on the